You will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
President Abdelmajid Tebboune has highlighted the leading role of Algeria in establishing a new, just and inclusive economic order, calling for the mobilization of the necessary financial resources to achieve the development priorities in Africa. Energy and Mines Minister Mohamed Arkab has reiterated from Italy Algeria's commitment to strengthening its role as a reliable energy supplier on a global scale. Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has taken part in a ministerial meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, devoted to how to implement the two-state solution and to the recognition of the Palestinian state. As more protests are being held to denounce the disastrous situation prevailing for months in Gaza, more air raids have been carried out by the Israeli occupation against the territory, killing and wounding several people. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad has taken part in a ministerial meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, devoted to the examining how to implement the two-state solution and the recognition of the Palestinian state. A communique issued by the ministry said that the meeting, attended by the foreign ministers of the Arab countries, members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, and European countries, said the meeting focused on the means and prospects of speeding up the implementation of the two-state solution and setting the recognition of the Palestinian state as a fair, lasting and final solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. In a speech made during this meeting, Attaf affirmed that the establishment of the independent and sovereign Palestinian state remains the very essence of any solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict, setting the issue as a main and inevitable challenge and a sign known and a condition for any serious peace process. The minister recalled in this context the historical facts linked to the Palestinian question, starting with UN 181 resolution, emphasizing the impossibility of achieving peace and security in the Middle East without allowing the Palestinians to exercise their legitimate rights of their independent and sovereign state with occupied East Jerusalem as its capital. Mr. Attaf further stressed that it is encouraging to see more and more countries recognizing the Palestinian state, calling on them to realize such an important and crucial steps toward achieving security and peace in the Middle East and safeguarding the two-state solution. In Qatar, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, was received in Doha by Qatar's Prime and Foreign Affairs Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, outside the third session of the Arab Economic and Cooperation Forum with the countries of Central Asia and the Republic of Azerbaijan. The two parties held the dynamic of the Qatari-Algerian relations in line with the course set and the ambitious vision outlined by the leaders of both countries, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and his counterpart, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The two men held notably the recent signature of a partnership agreement on the establishment of an integrated agricultural and industrial project for cattle breeding and the production of milk powder in the southern province of Adrar. Regarding the developments of the Palestinian question in light of the ongoing Israeli aggression against Gaza, the two parties stressed the convergence and complementarity of the efforts made by Qatar and Algeria to reach a permanent ceasefire and to replace the Palestinian cause within its true context that defines the setting up of a Palestinian state as a fair, sustainable and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has had a phone conversation with the Senegalese Minister of African Integration and Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Yassine Fall, who he again congratulated following her appointment at the head of the Senegalese diplomacy during a telephone conversation. Mr. Attaf expressed to his Senegalese counterpart the will of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to bring to a new era of solidarity the existing relations between Algeria and Senegal, based on the brotherly relations, and to strengthen the cooperation in all fields to serve the interest of the two countries. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has highlighted the leading role of Algeria in establishing a new, just and inclusive economic order, calling for the mobilization of the necessary financial resources to achieve the development priorities in Africa. More in this report by Essia Bekkar.
This came in a statement read on his behalf by Prime Minister Nadia El Arbaoui at the summit for the replenishment of resources of the International Development Association for Africa, AIDA 21, in Nairobi, Kenya. The President also underlined the major importance of the AIDA summit, describing it as a key step to supporting the priorities and aspirations of the African community within the framework of replenishment of resources of the International Development Association. He said the summit is also a timely opportunity to examine ways and means to face up to the challenges imposed by the current international context, notably the aggravation of the level of debts, the increase of benefits, and the scarcity of funding, which made a lot of poor countries decrease their necessary spending, including spending on vital sectors.
Algeria stresses once again the major financial role played by the International Development Association. Algeria inspires to adopting an ambitious and qualitative approach in terms of the operation of replenishment of resources, which contributes to increasing resources while taking into account the needs of the indebted countries. Algeria also renews her support to the initiatives and mechanisms capable of filling the gap of funding, alleviate the burden of debts, and monitor the necessary resources to the vital sectors.
The President also emphasized that the need for the international community to pull efforts to address the current complex challenges and address the root causes of conflicts and instability. He highlighted the major role of AIDA in meeting the financial needs of African countries, to which it dedicated more than 70% of its commitment during the 20th replenishment operation of its resources. Algeria called for an ambitious and qualitative approach in the replenishment of resources, stressing that the operation must take into account the priorities and needs of these countries to achieve the expected results. The President of the Republic also reaffirmed the support of Algeria to the initiatives and mechanisms aiming at increasing the development aid and reducing the debt burden. He reiterated Algeria's commitment to supporting solidarity and unity in Africa, reiterating Algeria's conviction that the security and development go hand in hand. He recalled Algeria's efforts to strengthening the capacities of African brotherly countries, recalling that the Algerian International Cooperation Agency for Solidarity and Development allocated an amount of $1 billion for the development projects in several neighboring countries. Recalling the deep economic reforms undertaken by Algeria to build a new economic model based on diversification, the creation of wealth, and the spirit of initiative, the President affirmed that thanks to these efforts, Algeria has increased its GDP significantly, notably over the last 2 years, with strengthened social achievements, supported investment, and financed the development of basic infrastructure.
The Prime Minister Nadia El Arbaoui has met with several African leaders as part of his participation at the summit meeting of the International Development Association, AIDA 21, on the sideline of the summit meeting of the International Development Association, AIDA 21. The Prime Minister Nadia El Arbaoui discussed with Kenyan President William Ruto the privileged and brotherly relations linking the two countries. The Algerian Premier also met with the President of Mauritania, Mohamed Ould Cheikh El Ghazouani, current President of the African Union, who held his country's relations with Algeria. Meanwhile, Mr. Arbaoui also met with Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who held Algeria's position, describing her as one of the few countries that still defend the values and principles of the African continent. The three African leaders separately asked the Algerian Premier to convey their greetings to President Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arkab, has reiterated in Turin, Italy, Algeria's commitment to strengthening its role as a reliable energy supplier on a global scale through major investments in gas exploration, production and transport infrastructure, with a view to ensuring energy security and meeting growing demand with an investment program of more than $52 billion. More details in this report by Majid Mila.
Addressing a ministerial meeting of the Group of the Most Industrialized Countries, or G7, on energy, environment and climate, the Minister of Energy said that Algeria had implemented a strategy aimed at doubling the natural gas energy by committing itself to ensure long-term supplies through a reduction of carbon footprint, whose work focused on practical means of strengthening interconnection and complementarity between procedures taken collectively to face the crisis induced by climate change, the loss of biodiversity and pollution, in addition of defining a secure, sustainable and affordable energy system to achieve prosperity for all. He added that the Turin meeting would undoubtedly contribute to deepening our common understanding of the challenges and opportunities we face and explore promising ways of strengthening our cooperation through a sustainable and inclusive development. In this speech, the minister evoked the repercussions and disruptions experienced by the world economy, as well as the imperative to strengthen the resilience of energy and economic systems and sustainable and innovative development processes. Arqab also raised the issue of access to energy, stressing that the Algerian state grants a major interest to increasing electricity production capacity, as well as strengthening transport infrastructures and energy distribution, which has helped ensuring optimal coverage of the country. Regarding the energy transition in Algeria, he recalled the launch of a process aimed at achieving a diversified and balanced energy mix to meet growing demand in a sustainable and safe way and with affordable prices, while reducing environmental effects, stating in this regard a significant commitment to reach 30% of renewable energies as part of the national energy mix by 2035. He added that such a plan is based on the implementation of the National Renewable Energy Programme, which tends to reach a capacity of 15,000 megawatts, of which 3,000 have already been launched, allowing Algeria to double its renewable energy capacity. The minister recalled in this context the Sonatrach project, aiming to plant more than 420 million shrubs over 10 years to create a new forest ecosystem which naturally reinforces carbon storage, reinforcing the country's commitment to fight against climate change. The Minister of Energy affirmed that Algeria has important assets, allowing her to become a major player in the development of hydrogen. In addition to this, he said that Algeria aspires to become a main access of energy regionally and an energy hub through several ambitious mega projects. The energy minister affirmed that the strengthening of electrical connections in Algeria, in addition to connections with Europe, will play a decisive role in accelerating the energy transition and supporting regional development, estimating that the mega project electrical connection of the southern Algeria network to the national network will help secure the integration of renewable energies with an investment exceeding $2 billion USD. The connection will strengthen local electricity supply and open the field for exports to Europe and create new lines to supply energy to African countries in our African neighboring countries. In this connection, the energy minister said the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project will connect Nigeria to Europe via Algeria and Niger, highlighting its socio-economic impact and its role in supporting local development and strengthening the strategic role of Algeria with the improvement of energy security in the northern coast. He stressed that as for the South 2 project, which aims to connect Algeria to Europe through pipelines dedicated to the transport of green hydrogen produced locally from our resources, will place Algeria at the forefront of the promising hydrogen industry. The minister also highlighted the importance of promoting cooperation between the G7 and the developing countries, which must be based on the principles of common interest in favor of achieving an inclusive and sustainable development, reaffirming Algerian support for efforts to meet global challenges such as climate change and energy security, including Africa, to ensure access to energy for all in response to the needs of the weakest, while working together to build a better future, more prosperous and more sustainable for our populations.
The launch of the Algeria-Tunisia-Libya tripartite initiative is a reflection that in politics as in life, action is always preferable to inertia. Asia Bekkar tells us more in this report.
The G3 summit meeting bringing together Algeria, Tunisia and Libya took place on April 22nd, and next year, 2025, will mark the 30th anniversary of the clinical death of the Arab Maghreb Union. Back then, the Moroccan Minister of Foreign Affairs had announced the freezing of the Arab Maghreb Union, and since then, all the institutions of the MAU have been deactivated. In 1995, the Moroccan Foreign Minister informed his Maghreb Union counterparts of the freezing of the body. And since then, under the pretext of the Western Sahara issue, the Arab Maghreb Union ceased to exist. As a result, the Carthage meeting came to discuss the already moribund Maghreb Union, as it cannot be back to life after such a long time. Algeria invited her North African brothers on the occasion of the Forum of Heads of State of Gas Exporting Countries organized in Algiers in March to think about another path, and Tunisia took the initiative of the Tunis Summit. The President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has announced the creation of 5 free zones with Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Tunisia and Libya. Meanwhile, all African countries are organized as a regional community except North Africa because of Morocco, which favored alliances with the Zionist entity and by inviting itself into other Middle Eastern organic structures. The Algerian president, however, stressed earlier that the door is open for those who want to join the G3.
ماهيش موجهة ضد أي دولة. جيراننا في الغرب باب مفتوح. هم داروا اختيارات أخرى وما شاوروناش واختاروا وحدهم في التنمية في الخليج. دخلوا في طالبين باش يكونوا عضو في لاسيديا وطالبين باش هادي. ما يسهل عليهم، أحرار بيان سور، كل واحد حر في التصرفات تاعو، ولكن احنا ماذا بينا فيه بعض الأمور اللي تهمنا مع بعض، وبالأخص أن مشاكلنا تكاد تشبه بعضها بعض. والباب مفتوح. احنا إذا كان نوحد الكلمة مرحبا، باش نعزل هذا ولا هذا وهذا، العمل ما تدخلش فيه الجزائر.
Algeria proposed a pragmatic dynamic for the Maghreb Union, which includes the most urgent issues such as the security of common borders, the fight against illegal migration and the launch of major investment projects, notably in energy, cereal production, seawater desalination and climate challenges. Joint working groups have been set up to implement these points, with the already signing of an agreement for the resolution between Algeria, Tunisia and Libya on the common ground water file in the Northern Sahara region, which had been a source of conflicts between the 3 countries since their respective independence. Now, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Mr. Qais Said and Mr. Mohamed Younis El Menfi had the audacity to refuse the morbid status quo of the MAU and seal the G3 as a strategic union to adapt to the regional and international changes. The G3 is therefore the first step to create this alliance of North African countries, and Mauritania will join one day. President Tebboune said earlier that geography and resources of the 3 partners make them an important bloc for the European Union, African Union and other regional and international blocs.
هو الباب مفتوح. احنا انطلقنا من الفراغ الموجود حاليا. ما فيش كتلة إفريقية شمالية. هذا هو، ما فيش. والأفارقة بنفسهم يقول لك ودي يتفاهموا. كاين لافريك دو الويست، كاين لافريك دو لاس، كاين لا سي دي او، كاين هذه، انتم وين راكم؟ قلنا نديروا لقاءات في البداية بدون ما نقصي أي واحد. نحاولوا نتلاقوا، ننسقوا مع بعض، نوحدوا كلمتنا في بعض المواضيع الدولية، في بعض المواضيع في اتفاق على أساس نخلق كيان مش ضد دولة من الدول تاع المغرب العربي، ولكن تكون كيفية نتاع تنسيق عمل، تشاور وتنسيق عمل. احنا مع تونس ننسق ومع ليبيا ننسق، ماذا بينا ننسقوا مع بعض احسن ما ننسقوا. العمل الثنائي مليح، العمل الثنائي تاعنا جيد، لا مع الاشقاء الليبيين ولا مع الاشقاء التوانسه ولا الاشقاء الموريتانيين، ولكن ماذا بينا نجمع كلمتنا ولو مره في كل 3 شهور ولا 4 شهور. شوفوا ان شاء الله فيها بادره تاع خير ان شاء الله.
The alliance, born in Carthage already, has the merit of being a proactive regional alternative which will establish itself over time as a credible and accountable bloc to other partner entities.
Here in Algiers, Portugal's ambassador to Algeria, Mr. Luis de Albuquerque Veloso, has expressed his country's will to deepen economic relations with Algeria in order to bring them up to the level of the excellent political relations linking the two countries. In a declaration to the press after being received by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmejid Tebboune, the Portuguese ambassador said the discussion focused on the President's successful visit to Portugal last year. Mr. Veloso expressed his joy regarding the hospitality offered by the Algerian people and held during his stay in Algeria. As more protests are being held to denounce the disastrous situation prevailing for months in Gaza, more air raids have been carried out by the Israeli army against the Palestinian territory, killing and wounding several people. Palestinian sources said at least 47 people were killed and over 60 others wounded for the past 24 hours in the bombardment launched against a refuge camp of Nusayrat in the central part of the Gaza Strip. This came as the head of the Palestinian National Council, Rawhi Fattouh, called on the international community to resume its support to UNRWA in order to ease the suffering of the Palestinians. Meanwhile, the head of the EU diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, announced that several EU countries should officially recognize the Palestinian state by the end of May. In Spain, the People's Parties will represent during the plenary session of the Congress of MPs a motion once again asking to the lower house to restore Spain's neutrality regarding the conflict in Western Sahara. The text presented by the party includes 8 points, which will probably be voted separately and not as a whole in order to attract the largest number of support among the MPs. The party wished that the Congress will encourage the reinstatement of Spain's historic neutral position regarding the conflict of Western Sahara, rejecting and cancelling the unilateral position adopted by the Spanish Prime Minister in March 2022. The People's Party referred to a recent letter sent by the Spanish Prime Minister to the King of Morocco and recalled that the change of position had not been taken into account either by the Council of Ministers or by the Congress of MPs. That's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a cultural program by Jamil Salmani.